We kind of have this feeling that suffering is something we're supposed to avoid at all costs. God never promised us a life devoid of suffering. He just promised to be with us. That's it. But I think there's a side of God that it's impossible to know unless and until we go through suffering. Hi, my name is Tammy, and today I'm just going to share a little bit of my heart in regards kind of like the theology of suffering, I guess. And so I'm just going to share some stories and some insights that God's kind of given me over the years, and I hope it's a blessing and an encouragement to you. So I know that many of us, you have people you look up to, people that you admire in the faith, in real life. I think that you'll find some commonalities among them. And I think about people who I know who feel, when I talk to them, when I hang out with them, they're older, seasoned, wise, and there's something almost mystical about the peace that they carry within them, that centeredness that they have. And if you began listening to stories of people who are right now, older people, but as well as our, the greats in the faith, you'll find some common threads among them. And some of those threads are, obviously miracles and salvation stories and all kinds of things. They seem to be wired differently in some ways. And as I've gotten to know more people and as I've read a lot, I've just started realizing there's this thread in all their stories. Every single person I can think of in my own life that I look up to, older, seasoned, wizened people, there's this thread of suffering and pain that they've gone through and that they've endured. And there's a direct correlation between that centeredness and that profound peace, that mantle of peace that they carry, and the fact that they've gone through suffering and they've gone through it well. And so I think that God wants to teach us something about that. I think about my daughter. She's when she was 13 years old, she's 15 now. When she was 13, we were basically kicked out of India, the place where we had lived. For her whole life, she's Indian, and as well as for me, my entire adult life, for 24 years. And she told me once when we got about a month later, she said, Mama, I don't think that I have a very strong Christian faith. I don't think I'm very strong in Christ. And I looked at her and I said, oh, okay, why do you think that? Why do you think that is? And she goes, oh, well, I've never gone through anything hard. And she said, I've never suffered. I've never gone through anything tough. And so that's why I think my faith is not that strong. I think when I go through something really tough, that time I'll have stronger faith. And I laughed a little bit inside, but part of me was like, oh my goodness, like this 13-year-old just spoke truth to me. And she was right. Now here's the funny thing about her. She's the glass is always half full kind of personality. And her birth story was very traumatic. And she had that. She came to me as an infant. She struggled her whole life with HIV. She was constantly in and out of the hospital. She almost died a couple of times. She's had hundreds of blood draws, and she's been on medication her entire life, several times a day. And on top of that, recently, I guess around the age of 8 or 9, she was diagnosed with dyslexia and a language processing disorder. And then, recently we were completely kicked out of the country that she loves and grew up in, and her entire family is there. Our family is there. All of her older siblings that she was raised with are still there, and yet nothing bad's ever happened to her. She's never suffered or gone through anything hard. So I'm sure God's going to use her in that positivity. But the truth is that she did hit on something kind of profound, didn't she? I don't know if my faith is as strong as it needs to be. I don't know that I've suffered. I don't know that I've gone through anything hard enough. And she's actually right. And so I think about some passages that kind of flash to me when I think about suffering. Paul, obviously talking about, I want to know Jesus and I want to know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship, the sharing of his suffering. I think about that. I think about where Romans, we're told there's something special, about rejoicing in our suffering, knowing that it produces endurance and character and hope. God never promised us a life devoid of suffering. He just promised to be with us. That's it. He promises to be with us again and again. He said, in this world, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trouble. It's going to be tough, but I'm with you. And we as a people of God, I feel like since I've been in America, maybe I have a little bit of a different perspective because of living in India for 24 years and kind of getting shell-shocked and culture shocked when I came to America. It was honestly a strong degree of culture shock. It might even be stronger than what I felt the first time I went to India. But I remember just having this thought that in the rest of the world, comforts are not guaranteed. Life is just really hard, and especially in the developing world, life is really hard. And it is here too, but it's a different kind of hard, a different kind of just a daily suffering that happens over there. And sometimes you get out of touch with it when you're sitting in Starbucks and drinking a Frappuccino and scrolling through Instagram. It's kind of hard to understand. By the way, I love all those things, but at the same time, I recognize that sometimes we're not in touch with our suffering in America because we surround ourselves with so much comfort. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think there's a side of God that it's impossible to know unless and until we go through suffering. I really believe that we kind of have this feeling that suffering is something we're supposed to avoid at all costs, and it's not something to be scared of, to avoid or defend against or to run from. It's actually something to embrace, because there, in the suffering, if we'll submit, if we'll cling to Jesus, like there's life, and there's a side of God and a fellowship with God and a knowing of God and a intimacy with Christ that can't be found in any other scenario. And so for that reason alone, it's enough that should want us to embrace suffering instead of run from it, to identify with Jesus. I think one of the secrets is cultivating a rich life with Jesus, intimacy with him. In the middle of struggle and pain and adversity, our immediate response isn't going to be, why, God? Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? But instead, it'll be a clinging to Yahweh, a clinging to God, instead of why? Woe is me. Why is this happening? There'll be more of a responsive clinging. And I think that kind of happens through intimacy and through embracing suffering instead of running from it. I think about some of the hard things that I've gone through in the past 24 years, especially, and of course there's an element of lament and crying out that's obviously healthy and good. I don't think we can embrace suffering unless we're honest about it at first, to lament it, to be honest about it and be real about it, authenticity. But at the same time, to know in those deep moments that if we'll give ourselves to God, we'll experience a side of him that we can never experience in any other way. And I want that. As a brand new Christian at the University of Georgia, I was an atheist, and one of my first prayers was, I want to know God. I want to know him. I want to know him. I want to know him inside and out. I want to know him. And it's been the cry of my heart, in all the years since. That was 30 years ago, and it's never changed for me. But if I really want to know him, then I need to know him and the fellowship of his sufferings. That's part of it. I'll tell you one more story. When I was kicked out of India, I was devastated. I was a mess. I was a mess for a long time. I was an emotional mess. My kids were still there. These kids that I had raised and had grown into adulthood, and many of them were still teenagers. I was devastated, and I had been here about a month, and I finally got the courage to go to church. I was scared to go to church because I didn't know what anybody was going to say to me. I just didn't want to face people, and I was a mess. And a well-meaning, wonderful woman, I know that she meant well. She came up to me and she looked at me in the eyes, and she kind of got close to me and said, Tammy, I just feel like God brought you here to be a blessing to the American church. That's why you're here right now, is we need you in America. We need your stories. We need your stories of faith. We need all the things that you have to impart. That's why. And I looked at her. My disclaimer is I was in a broken place. And so I did later apologize. But I said, so you mean to tell me that God re-orphaned 46 orphans so that I could minister to you? And of course, she got a shocked expression on her face. And I later apologized because that was a really mean thing to say. But it's part of it. It's true. There's a temptation for all of us to want to package suffering, to want to put a bow on it, to assign meaning to it, to assign purpose behind it, and then we can reconcile with suffering. You know, if I knew the meaning, if I knew the purpose, if I knew what God had in mind, if I could see, you know, then I can assign, if I can assign meaning and purpose to it, then I'm okay with it, and then I'm at peace with it. And I don't think that's a call at all. I don't think that's our call in any way, shape, or form. God's not calling us to assign meaning or purpose to our suffering. It's messy. And we may or may not ever know the meaning or purpose, and it may not even be any meaning and purpose. I don't know. But the point is, our job is to cling to God in those moments and to be authentic before him, to pursue him. It's not our job to assign a reason behind it. And so I think that's a temptation we have in the American church, and I would love to see maybe a more solid teaching and a robust theology of suffering kind of be taught from the pulpits, you know, on a regular basis. So thanks a lot, guys.